Moff.
Here.
Ms. Kalinowski.
Here.
Mr. Bush.
Here.
Vice President Darrow.
Here.
President McClellan.
Here. Please stand for the pledge.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
We have the meeting minutes for the March 12th meeting in front of you. Ask for a motion to approve the board minutes.
So moved.
Mr. Newmoff and Mr. Bush. Roll call, please.
Mr. Newmoff.
Yes.
Mr. Bush.
Yes.
Ms. Kalinowski.
Yes.
Vice President Darrow.
Yes.
President McClellan.
Yes. And for tonight's agenda, any additions or corrections to the agenda?
We have an addendum agenda for this evening, please.
With that addendum, could I have a motion to approve tonight's agenda?
So moved.
Second.
Kalinowski and Mr. Newmoff. Roll call, please.
Ms. Kalinowski.
Yes.
Mr. Newmoff.
Yes.
Mr. Bush.
Yes.
Vice President Darrow.
Yes.
President McClellan.
Yes. Our first communications to the board, superintendent's items, Mr. Sawyers.
Thank you, President McClellan. I'd like to begin this evening with really a public thank you to the Board of Education, to our partners within the city and the township for their participation in the community conversation on school safety. We received a lot of positive commentary from our community at large for the 175 plus participants that were there that evening to have the conversation, to talk about safety on the school campus, but also within the city and the township, and specifically our partners within the police and fire departments. So it was very well received. We published the actual videotape that Patrick took, Galloway, Director of Communications, on our district website. We've sent it out through Newswire, and the city has also released it through its listserv for distribution purposes, and I believe the township will do the same. But we received a lot of positive commentary, and I want to thank the Board of Education for your participation that evening. I think it was very well received by all in general. Next, as an infomercial, on May 1st, we're hosting a community forum specifically related to alcohol. Elizabeth Vargas is the student lecture series for the Jefferson series coming on May 9th. But on May 1st, to precede her participation for our student lecture for the high school students, but also for our community for the evening lecture as part of the Jefferson series, we're hosting a community conversation specifically related to alcohol. We're partnering with MAD and actually going through and doing some work to talk about parents who host the most lose the most, and then also have conversations specifically that evening to talk about the impact of drinking and driving and or using alcohol for adolescent purposes, or alcohol usage by adolescents and the dangers that it exhibits. So MAD is our partner that evening, and they've graciously working with the school district to produce that. But we would like to invite everyone to attend on May 1st at 7 o'clock at the intermediate school for the community forum specifically for alcohol. Believe it or not, the end of the school year is upon us. I've seen just in conversations with kids, and there's several teachers in the audience tonight, and I know if I ask them, they'll know the answer just like this. But the kids are counting down, believe it or not. Not that teachers are, but the kids are. It's on whiteboards and dry erase boards. It's in the cafeteria. It's on buses. It's just about everywhere. But after today, there are 25 official student days left for underclassmen. Seniors clearly get out a little bit earlier because of this thing called graduation. But our underclassmen have 25 official days left. So they're less than 30. And trust me, the kids are excited. But at the same time, we are in the midst of statewide testing. So we are testing, and more testing across the entire school campus because there are only 25 days of school left. So all the state assessments are underway. We've had one major glitch day related to the AIR testing specific for English language arts. Had nothing to do with the school district. It was a statewide malfunction within the software system. So we actually have 2 additional days that have been extended by the state to allow us to go to May 1st to finish the testing for English language arts. But testing is occurring across the entire school campus. So at different times, different days, different grade levels. But for really the next 3+ weeks, we are in test mode. So by the second week of May, we'll be complete, makeups will be over with, and then we really have 2 weeks of school left. And then lastly tonight, as part of my superintendent report, I'm going to publicly welcome, and he's in the personnel section this evening, but to publicly introduce Ken Kramer. Ken Kramer is joining the school district as the next principal of New Albany High School. to succeed the infamous Dwight Carter, who is seated behind him, who's going on to his next professional endeavor in his career. We're very excited that Ken is choosing to join us. He currently serves as the principal of Licking Heights High School. He survived the laborious 4-week interview process that he had to go through to earn the position. But we've concluded the interview process and are very happy to welcome him to our school district officially this evening through recommendation through board agenda. Ken earned a master's in educational leadership from the University of Cincinnati and his bachelor's of sciences in integrated social studies and education from Bowling Green. He has a superintendent, a license that was awarded in 2015 by Miami University of Ohio. Someday has the aspiration, not in the near future, to become a superintendent. He's going to be a high school principal for a while because of the 3 people that are sitting next to him this evening. Lisa is his wife. She's the director of People Services in Licking Heights, and they have 2 children, Ava and Isabella, a kindergartner and a 1st grader. So I've told him he has many, many years to decide when he wants to be a superintendent. So do not rush into that decision. He loves being a high school principal. He's going to be a tremendous asset to the school district. He's student-centered. He went through the process. He got to meet several teachers. In the last round, we had 68 people interviewing the 3 finalists, and Ken emerged as the victor. So we're very pleased to welcome Ken to the district tonight. His background in using data to increase academic outcomes while improving school culture will serve us well as the next high school principal, again, to succeed Dwight Carter. So Ken, on behalf of the leadership team and really all faculty, staff, and students that are in our school district and are present this evening, welcome to New Albany, and get ready for the ride. Would you like to say anything? I'd like to invite you at this time.
Thank you very much for this opportunity. I really appreciate everything that I've learned about the district and the community through the interview process. Like Mr. Sawyer's alluded to, it was pretty intense. I think we met a total of 5 times in 4 weeks. And I think, through the interview process, I got to know a little bit more about the district, and they were getting to know me. Being right next door in Licking Heights and living in Westerville, drive through the city every day, really am excited about what New Albany is, what New Albany can be, and really want to become a part of that. I think that was the one thing that I continuously said. I love the idea of being in a district that isn't going to settle for anything less than being number 1. And I'm really excited for the opportunity to be part of it. So thank you very much. And I look forward to working with all of you in the future. Thank you.
Thank you.
Congratulations. That concludes my report for this evening, because we have a couple of presentations for you tonight.
I think our next presentation is from the Auditor State. This is becoming kind of the standard yearly thing that you guys do here. Mr. Kraft from the Auditor State's office.
Listen, this is not easy. Okay, just because we get it every year doesn't mean it's easy.
He'll tell you that.
He's going to tell you all about that.
No, it's great to be here. A lot of times when you unfortunately hear about the Auditor State's office, it's usually when we're bringing bad news. Tonight's one of those great nights where we're bringing good news. And tonight I'm here to present the highest award the Auditor State's office gives out, and that is the Auditor State Award with Distinction. It's given to those entities that file an annual CAFR, a timely financial report in accordance with GAAP, as well as receive a clean audit. A clean audit report means your financial audit did not contain any findings recovery, material citations, material weaknesses, significant deficiency, single audit findings, or any questionable costs. That's a lot of audit speak. Like Becky alluded to, is how hard it is to receive this award. Believe it or not, the state of Ohio has 6,000 forms of government in the state of Ohio. The Auditor State's office is responsible for auditing every single one of them, from the Ohio State University to the smallest township in Benton County. Out of those 6,000, only 5% of them received this award. And Becky, I think you received it. I don't even know when the last time you haven't received it.
Not since I've been here.
So to win it year after year after year like that, to be in that high percentile, like the new principal said, to be the best, and that's obviously what Becky and her staff does. And it's my honor and pleasure to come here every single year, and I look forward to many more years to present the Auditor State Award with Distinction to Becky Jenkins.
Becky, do you want want to introduce Monica?
Yes, we couldn't do this without, well, everyone cooperating, but Monica is my assistant and does a fantastic job monitoring and making friends with lots of people who maybe don't quite understand how things are supposed to work. So she really does the bulk of the heavy lifting. And she compiles the calendar.
Congratulations.
Next, we have an update from Plea.
Good evening. My name is Caroline Coas, and I am a fourth grade teacher in the intermediate school, and I am Plea representation tonight. So I'm going to do this a little bit out of order because all of you have a copy, so I'm going to try to condense it a little bit. The first and the third, as well as the seventh on the back, all have to do with the R factor and how the high school, the intermediate school, as well as even the ELC has implemented the R plus O, or E plus R is equal to O. And also in the first summary, the ninth grade humanities team has also given a year-long character education program entitled PARAGON, and they've done various different things, including engaging different speakers coming to the school. They had panel discussions with soldiers and veterans, as well as they're hoping that this will carry over to different character traits and help these students become more active citizens and members of the community. The second summary is from the first grade teachers, that they held a special night for the families, and it had to do with the 2008 Winter Olympics, and the students chose a favorite athlete. They studied the athlete, they studied the sport, and then they used technology in order to present their findings to the parents. The third one is the R factor, so we talked a little bit about that. The fourth one down talks about the art teachers and the primary staff in the building, and Pam McDowell and Kristen Howell actually taught the teachers about clay construction techniques, and they created fish sculptures. On the back, second grade teacher Sarah Rax is a National Geographic teacher certification. She has earned her certification through the program of National Geographics, and she's going to use that in her classroom in many different interdisciplinary ways. The sixth one down, the teachers Patty Banis and Vicki Lawrensky's ceramic and sculpture classes. They took an honors class to the hot glass blowing workshop at the Glass Access Studios in downtown Columbus. So that kind of sums it up. Thank you.
Thank you. Moving on to discussion items. Any board liaison reports for tonight? Okay, with none, the next item is a technology update.
Yes, at this time, I'd like to welcome Mike Bosse, the Director of Technology. He's going to start the facilitation of the presentation this evening and invite other people to participate as we move through the process. The presentation should show up on your iPads that are in front of you, because Mike's going to explain that you're part of the Apple Classroom that he's using this evening to facilitate the actual presentation.
So hopefully it showed up. Thank you, Mr. Sawyers. Hopefully it showed up there. You see what's on the screen here. You can follow along just by scrolling up. So if you wander too much, I will lock your iPad and force you to pay attention up here so I can see what you're doing.
We're warned.
So it's all powerful is good. I appreciate you giving me the opportunity to talk about a possible future with technology in the district. I think we're excited about it, both when I say we, administrators, teachers, IT staff. It's been a long time planning and preparing for this, so we're going to go through the proposal with you and hopefully answer any questions, concerns that you might have with it. So as we start to talk about the path forward, moving forward with technology, we're going to take a brief look at the last couple years. So I started in August 2015, so I'm going to kind of start from there. Prior to that, I can't really speak to. the state of things at that point before that. So I'll talk about from August 2015 to today, and then what the future could look like for us should we choose to go down this path. So a year ago, we had a technology committee, and the committee was formed with administrators, teachers, classified staff, the IT department. And what we did at that time was to look at both the current state of technology in the district and the future state. So basically, where are we now and where do we want to be? And then how do we get there? And we called it a roadmap. So part of that roadmap conversation, we came up with this graphic. A lot of times in school districts, when people talk about technology, they want to jump right in and get devices and put them in kids' hands and in classrooms. And what happens is they fail to build the infrastructure, the foundation, and things end up failing. And then they end up buying more devices, changing direction, and no one is happy. Everyone is kind of mad and sad, and they keep starting over. So what we talked about with the committee was, how do we go forward and make it sustainable? Not just from a budgetary standpoint, but from a standpoint where it's going to work. And we can count on it just like a light switch. Because with technology in schools, you want it to work like a light switch. If you flip the switch and the lights don't come on, then people just tend to stop flipping the switch. So that's what this graphic is getting at. We're going to start at the bottom. So the foundation for everything we're going to do technology-wise in the district has to do with the infrastructure. Once we get the infrastructure right, then we can move up to devices. We can talk about software on the devices, and then we can talk about what it looks like in the hands of students and teachers and how we actually improve learning and teaching. So we're going to go through just a brief history, like I said, the last couple of years up to where we were and where we are now, and then how we want to move forward. So back in 2015, there were a lot of kinks in our network. It wasn't designed in an optimal way. I can't really speak to how I got to that point, but when I got here, there were several issues with that. And some examples that I was given when I came in was in the spring of 2015, when before the now intermediate building, before it was completely open, that they attempted to do online testing in that building when it was empty. And during that time, and I know Brian Dawson was in the district at the time, but during that time, when they tried to do it in that building alone, it crashed the network for the whole district. So the whole district came down because they tried to do a couple hundred tests online in one building. And that had nothing to do with the equipment, it had nothing to do with any cabling, anything like that. It was all design of the network. It was just poorly designed. It couldn't handle the traffic, so it just shut down. And I know the IT team at the time, they scrambled and they got everything back up and it worked, but now it still wasn't designed properly. Other examples, prior, in 2015 or earlier, at the high school was actually running out of IP addresses. And I know this is kind of tech speak, but that's like saying that AT&T runs out of phone numbers. So they give you a new phone, but good luck, you don't have a phone number. You can't do a lot with it. So an IP address is how a device gets online, gets connected to the network. So literally, the high school ran out of IP addresses, so devices couldn't connect to the network. And again, had nothing to do with hardware, had nothing to do with cabling, it was all network design. So those things were identified, and over the last couple of years, both the IT department and one of our partners, Think CSC, has worked to remove those kinks from the network. It's not perfect, but just as points of reference, Mr. Story brought up earlier, we've been doing online testing for the last couple of weeks in the district, and knock on wood, there haven't been internal network issues. There's been random issues, but we haven't crashed the district like it did before. And this is testing in all buildings simultaneously, not just one isolated building. Another point of example is the high school. We routinely have over 2,000 devices on the high school network alone, and those are just student devices. So the whole issue of running out of IP addresses and the kinks, those are gone. It's not perfect. We continue to look at things and make it better. But we're in a lot better spot today than we were 3 years ago. Other issues in 2015 as far as technology, the wireless network. In 2015, there were a lot of dead spots in the district. You could go to places in the high school and not get connected to the Wi-Fi. You could go to places in the middle school and not get connected. It was that way in every building. And again, it was just kind of how things grew over time and they got to that point. But it was a lot of dead spots, a lot of holes in the Wi-Fi. And even in the spots where you could get connected, it couldn't maintain the capacity. So too many devices were being connected, which made the experience very slow and not efficient, not good for the user. So the last couple of years, we've been systematically updating the wireless network, where we've installed at the ELC, the high school, the middle school, a new product called Meraki. The product isn't new, it's new for New Albany. But Meraki now is our wireless solution. This summer, we'll continue that trend. We'll update the intermediate building. And then next year, we'll finish off the district by updating the primary building. But now not only is it a new device that is quote unquote future-proof, it's ready for the next generation of Wi-Fi mobile devices, but it's also engineered in a way where it can handle the capacity. Like I said, routinely, we have hundreds of more devices on the network in each building than there are people in the building. So now we have the robust network that we need to move forward. And we'll just finish out the district over the next couple years. And this is one of my favorite pictures. This was probably my second week on the job here. This is, for those of you that don't know, I'm sure there's a couple that aren't sure what you're looking at here, but this is what runs the district. This is our core router. So all the traffic in the district goes through this box down in the center middle of the picture, behind that rat's nest of cables. So anything going from building to building, anything going out to the internet, runs through this core router. So there's several things wrong with this picture. And one of them, surprisingly, really isn't the rat's nest of cables. There's worse things wrong with the picture. One thing you can't really see is at the bottom of this. So this is in our server room. And server rooms typically have a raised floor. That means you can run the cables beneath the floor to connect it to other devices. So all those rat's nest of cables goes down under the floor and then connect to servers. The problem is the power that powers that device up also runs through the floor. If you go back to your high school physics days, when you run power and data parallel to each other, it causes interference. So this core was a brand new core in 2015 or 2014, but it was over $100,000 to purchase and install. But because of the way that it was set up, because the data and the power running parallel to each other under the floor, it's a 10 gigabit core. It's just numbers. You're supposed to get 10 gigabits of data through it. But because the power was running parallel to it, you were only getting 1 gigabit of data through it. So it was running at 10% capacity. Okay, it was working, things were working, but that contributed to the kinks and the slowness in the network. The other thing wrong with the picture is that box in the lower left that nothing's connected to. That's the old core router. That's a 1 gigabit core router. So the idea was to upgrade to the 10 gigabit, more data through it, faster, more efficient. The reality didn't happen, but notice there's nothing plugged into that old core. There was nothing wrong with it, it just wasn't fast. So why not plug something into it to give us some redundancy? Because in this picture, if something happens to the new core, the whole district comes down, and there's no getting around it. So what we did, a couple things. This picture doesn't look a lot better, but it is getting better each year that we work on it. A couple things we changed. We took the data cables, instead of running them under the floor with the power, they now go up over a ladder rack, so they're above this picture going to the server room. The power still goes below. Now we've eliminated that interference from the power. The other thing you'll notice is that the old core is plugged in, so now we have redundancy. And this actually helped us out about a year ago now. If you recall, there was an issue in the district where the network did crash, but it happened at night, so nobody knew. No users knew. But what happened was the new core got clogged up. Luckily, we had the old one plugged in, and nobody knew the next morning that anything was wrong because of the redundancy we built into the system. So those are just things that, just by unplugging some few cables, by rerouting them, we're able to increase the efficiency, the capacity of the network by taking advantage of what was already in place, just kind of redesigning the way that it worked. So the physical environment was addressed. So now you're looking at what proper cable management should look like. So instead of a rat's nest of cables, you bundle them up, you adhere them, you put them off to the side so they're not in the way. So this is our server room. So all those cables in the other pictures are connected to these servers. These servers run everything in the district, okay? Prior to last summer, we had 4 servers running everything. And those were old kind of generic white box servers. And I know Brian and Tim can correct me, but we had 4-day support on those servers. That means if something were to go wrong, in 4 days, we get the replacement part to fix it. That's not a good situation when you're running an enterprise organization. If the server goes down, you want it fixed immediately. The other problem with it was that we had to call some guy named Dale to come out, and maybe he'd get a hold of us and come out with the part. That was his name, right, Dale? So not a good situation. So what we did this last summer is we upgraded. We're using now a Cisco UCS system. Basically, we replaced 4 servers with 1 server. It's much more efficient. We have same-day support. If something fails, we get that part that day within 8 hours, and we're up and running again. So we've increased the efficiency, the capabilities by replacing the servers that needed to be replaced anyways. So a lot of changes have been happening in the infrastructure, both in just design, so just using brain power to redesign things, in replacing equipment like the Wi-Fi, like the servers. Just by taking time to manage cables properly, we've increased the capacity of the network, the capability, so we have a good foundation in our triangle. So we have that good infrastructure now. So the next layer up are the devices. So now that our infrastructure is solid, we want to talk about the devices that both our students use and our staff use. And that's what makes a difference in the classrooms then. So currently in the district, we have about 2,500 Chromebooks, and that's our main student device. But it's important to understand why we have Chromebooks as our choice. Back in 2015, when online testing was starting to really ramp up, and the state was eliminating the option of doing paper and pencil tests, it had to all be online. At that point, we didn't have enough devices in the district to conduct online testing. The high school, one of my first meetings here, we're meeting about online testing, and they wanted to test about 300 students. The problem is they had 0 devices in the building that could support online testing. The main device at the high school was a 7-inch netbook. Problems with that, it was old, it was slow, but the bigger problem was it wasn't supported by the state. For online testing, the device has to be at least 10 inches for a screen size. So none of these netbooks could be used for online testing at the high school. So in order to compensate for that, we leased at the beginning of that year, I know it was one of the first things that I worked with Ms. Jenkins on, leasing 810 Chromebooks. We did that just so we could get some testing going in the district that we needed. The problem was it wasn't nearly enough devices for the whole district. So we spent time wheeling carts of Chromebooks up and down the sidewalk. It was a logistic nightmare because we were in the primary building one day, had to go to the middle school the next day, had to go to the high school the next day, and then back again. So it was very inefficient. So what we needed to do was get more devices for testing. So we bought more Chromebooks over the next couple of years. Right now, like I said, we have about 2,500 Chromebooks. And as alluded to earlier, we're doing testing with kind of flawlessly in the district right now. We're not having to feel those pains that we felt a couple years ago. But the big problem is we bought those Chromebooks for one reason only, so we could do online testing. And that's not a good reason to buy a device for a school. We want to buy devices for schools that will actually improve learning and improve teaching in the district. We had an immediate need to address, so we bought a bunch of Chromebooks. Now that we're stable, both infrastructure-wise, both we can support testing, now I want to take a step back and look at what is the right device to use for students and staff in our buildings so we can move forward and improve that learning and teaching that's going on. And we believe through lots of conversations that the iPad is the right device for students and teachers going forward. iPads are just a better fit for our district. The The operating system is intuitive, it's just easy to use, and it's very powerful, much more powerful than a Chromebook. But beyond what we think, we started to look at our data. So we try to have all our decisions data-driven. So when I look at the wireless network at the high school, and this is on average on a daily basis, 85.86% of our high school students bring an iOS device into school every day. And 31% of our students at the high school bring in an Apple laptop every day. So even though New Albany as a district hasn't been purchasing a lot of Apple devices, we are an Apple district. The students and their parents have made a choice that Apple is the platform, the operating system of choice. And our data shows that. And data is not unique to the high school. The middle school has similar numbers, and even down at the intermediate school, when I look at the data from that school, 1,172 devices, personal student-owned devices on the network at that building are iOS devices. And out of that number, 1,172, 219 of them are iPads. So just keep in mind, this is only student personal devices. The students and their parents are choosing this device to use for schoolwork, both at school and at home. So when we look at these numbers, Apple and the iOS environment is our students' ecosystem. It's where they live every day, both in school and at home. It's what they know how to use. It's what they prefer to use. It's what they're good at using. So from that standpoint, why would we try to force them into anything else? Beyond that, when we look at Chromebooks and iPads, neither device is perfect. There's pros and cons to both devices. You're never going to find a perfect device in a school. When we start looking at them, a couple things to keep in mind. Chromebooks are pretty much a K-12 school device. You don't see Chromebooks out there in businesses, industries, for the most part. Secretaries in our buildings don't use Chromebooks. You go out there, the Chromebook is a school device. And it makes sense for schools. They're cheap, they're easy to manage, you can get a lot of them really quickly. But they're not powerful to do, quote unquote, real world stuff. You're limited to Google and websites for the most part with that. When we look at trends in technology use, mobile devices are becoming more and more common, both in personal use and in businesses and industries. You think about your life and how many times do you interact on a mobile device? I probably answer more email, I probably do more web browsing on my phone than I do on my computer on a daily basis. So when we look at those trends, mobile devices are much more common, much more user-friendly, and going to become more and more prevalent over time. The other thing we look at, not just companies and personal lives, but we look at higher ed. So Ohio State announced recently that they're going to start giving all their incoming freshmen an iPad Pro. So they're going to roll out 11,000 plus iPad Pros this fall across all their campuses to their incoming freshmen. So when I called up Ohio State, I talked to a couple of their directors in charge of this. I started asking them questions, why are you doing iPads? And they gave me the same answers that I just gave you. They looked at their wireless network at Ohio State. It was all mostly iOS devices. And their bookstores on campus where they sell technology, they sell out of Apple equipment. Android, Windows devices sit there. It's what the kids, college kids, are using. So for the same reasons I was giving you, Ohio State made that same decision that the iPad Pro, the iOS device, was going to be their device of choice going forward with it. So we look at all those things combined. We look at our data, we look at the trends in technology, we look at what higher ed's doing, we look at what businesses are leading to. The iPad is the better choice than the Chromebook for all of those reasons. So we move on with our pyramid here. We've got the infrastructure. We've kind of talked about iPads as being the device. So now we'll look at software. Any device, whether it's a computer, a tablet, a Chromebook, any device is only as good as its operating system and as the applications you can put on that device. Without those things, it's a paperweight. So when we look at the software that can go on iPads, one, we already talked about the operating system, iOS. Kids are already used to it. It's intuitive. It's easy to use. It just works for you. It's very stable. And we talk about apps that you can put on the iPad. We've got all the Apple apps. You've got productivity tools with Pages, Numbers, Keynote. You've got creativity tools. I can make movies. I can make songs. You've got resources like iTunes U and iBooks where I can get free learning resources. And then you got Apple Classroom. So Apple Classroom is the management tool, and it's how I push the website to you. So now teachers with Apple Classroom, instead of waiting for the students to go to a website, they can just push the website like I did for you guys to the students. I can see what you're doing on your devices. So if you're wandering off, I can lock your device. So just as a quick demo here, I can just pull up Apple Classroom. I can see your devices. So if we pick up table 1, I'm not sure which one of you is table 1, but I can view your screen. So I see someone's not paying attention to the presentation.
I'm making sure I can.
I will lock that iPad.
Guess who got locked?
So now that iPad is locked.
What's that going to cost?
Now that iPad is locked, and that student is forced to play the game that I'm playing. If I'm nice, I will unlock that, and now that student can continue, now that they're back on track, can continue to follow along in the presentation. But it's that type of interactivity, that type of both monitoring and managing the devices that's just going to make the teachers' lives that much easier. Because when you ask the teachers, and several of them are here tonight to talk, a lot of time is wasted in classrooms having kids open up a Chromebook, going to a website, or getting them back on task because they're wandering. Apple Classroom is built into the OS, and it just works, and the teacher can manage everything. So Apple has their ecosystem of apps. In addition to that, they have a whole coding curriculum. So we always talk about kids learning to code. Apple's built a whole free curriculum about how to teach anybody how to code, and it's built into the iPad. But beyond Apple's apps, there's Google. We're still a Google district. We're still going to use Gmail. We're still going to use Google Docs. All those apps go on the iPads. So we're not going to lose anything on the Chromebook. We're gaining what's on the iPad with that. So no one has to change any behavior in terms of Google. It's just going to continue to work, but on the iPad. And then we have New Albany specific apps. We have our website app. We have our ClassLink app, which is a single sign-on environment. Our help desk. I can manage our wireless system from an iPad. I can remote into servers from the iPad. We can use PowerSchool. We can use Schoology. And then we have the testing apps, the AIR app for the state test, the NWA app for the MAP testing. So again, we're taking the best of what was on the Chromebook, it's on the iPad, and now we're adding many more layers of functionality and features to that to give both the students and the teachers what they need to be successful in life. And then we've heard for 10 plus years for Apple, the App Store, there's an app for that. And there pretty much is. For whatever you want to do, you can find an app out there. Most of them are free. So we're not limited to just Apple and Google. There's all sorts of apps out there that can help improve that learning and teaching in the district. So next layer up on our triangle is the integration. We've got the infrastructure. We've settled on a device. We've got the software, the apps that we want on those devices. Now how we're going to use it in the classrooms. Because again, it's all pointless. We're going to waste money if the devices aren't used properly in classrooms. And we don't want to use technology just for the sake of using technology. We want to use it with one purpose in mind: improve learning and teaching in our district. So with that, we need to make sure that we stay student focused. It's not about the app. It's not about the iPad. It's about what the students can do with those things and how that improves both their skills and their knowledge to prepare them for the next level in life. We also need to make sure we support the teachers. So we need to provide enough professional development for the teachers so they're experts on the devices. The worst thing with a device is that you don't know what you don't know. So you don't know that it can do something because you were never trained. You were never shown how to do that. So we need to build in professional development, both district-sponsored PD and bring in experts from Apple to come in and train our staff on how to use the devices. But the whole point of integrating the technology in the classroom isn't just to substitute one tool for another. It's to actually redefine what's going on in the classrooms to transform learning and teaching in the district. So that brings us to the proposal. So with the proposal, kind of got it laid out over about 8 fiscal years here. So next year, our focus is going to be on mainly the intermediate building. We're also going to address needs at the primary and ELC. We're going to upgrade the displays in the primary and ELC buildings. We're going to take out all the smart boards, all the old projectors, which we can't support anymore. We can't get parts for them to replace them. So they're at the end of life anyway. Something has to be done. So we're going to replace them with 70-inch displays. So similar to this display, but it's not touchscreen. It's just basically a 70-inch TV. We're going to add Apple TVs to all of those displays so the teachers and students can mirror like I'm mirroring right now. So all I did is I unplugged the computer and plugged in the Apple TV to this, and now it's running off of my iPad here. We're also going to upgrade teacher devices, and this is something that has to be done anyways. The teachers in these buildings are using laptops that are 6+ years old. They need to be replaced anyways. So we're going to replace them with iPad Pros and then MacBook Airs. So we can have the whole Apple ecosystem working the way it should. Then at the intermediate building specifically, we're going to go completely one-to-one. 6th graders and 5th graders will get the iPad. They'll be able to take it home with them. 4th graders will get iPads, but they stay in carts in the classroom overnight. We'll put 10 iPads in each classroom with the ELC, and then we'll put some seeds of iPads at the primary building, preparing for their future. Then the next fiscal year, we move on to the middle school and high school, upgrade their displays, upgrade the teachers there with iPad Pros. We go one-to-one 3rd grade classroom. The 4th graders in fiscal year 19 that are now 5th graders get the iPad to take home, and the 9th graders get an iPad Pro that they'll take home. And then each year after that, it kind of continues that trend. So laying it out over 8 fiscal years, I've got the estimated costs there. I can tell you that these costs, based on what we've done recently, are over estimates. So the quotes we're getting back from the vendors are coming in a lot lower than anticipated. It's still quite a bit of money, but a lot of this has to be done anyways. Like I said, the smart boards and projectors have to be replaced anyways. Teacher laptops have to be replaced anyways. So let's just do it smartly so that we can move forward as a district with the best device for students and teachers. So kind of as a proof of concept, we've selected 11 teachers across the district. We put displays in their rooms, Apple TVs, we'll give them iPad Pros. And really we wanted to test a few things. How are teachers going to take to the change? How are students going to take to the change? And what does this change mean for the future? What do they anticipate, good, bad, ugly, going forward with that? So I'm going to turn it over to Katie Nowak, principal at the intermediate school, to kind of share the experiences at each of our buildings with those pilot teachers.
Thank you. So over the past couple of months, we've been really excited to test out and pilot the Apple devices at the intermediate school, as well as in the early learning center, the primary, the middle, and the high. So I'm going to highlight for you tonight some videos and examples of students and teachers and their experiences. And I will invite a few of them at the end to come up and share some personal stories with you, as well as the opportunity to ask questions. So one of the great things about the iPad Pro is the Apple Pencil. And I've been a Droid user through and through, so I've been learning right alongside everybody else. But I will tell you that after this experience, I'm so excited for Apple because of the functionality and the features that the iPad offers that the Chromebooks do not. So with an Apple Pencil, students can actually, in the Notability program, write right on the device. And the precision of the pencil is actually quite impressive. And I've gotten way better at taking notes over the past few weeks that I've been using it. But in this example from the Early Learning Center, you have examples of kindergarten students in Melinda Whitehead-Morin's classroom actually practicing their writing and letter formation. And the nice thing about the iPad and the Apple TV is it can be mirrored. So I can instantaneously bring this up on the screen. If I want to highlight a particular student's work or show what somebody's doing in the class, I can do that. I'm going to show you just a real quick video. Maybe on the right device. Told you I'm still learning.
does this sentence have to be your sentence? No, it doesn't have to be your sentence. My cat, that's old, it's fancy. I could make your picture.
So that just gives you an example how the iPad can be mirrored to the Apple TV instantaneously, and that even at the Early Learning Center, the kids are actively engaged in using the writing utensil to practice various written responses, letter formation, responding through interactive writing within the classroom. So that's a great example there. You'll also notice, and due to time, I'm not going to go into it today, but there is a link to a presentation I put together for superintendent coursework that I'm taking. There are additional examples up there and research behind one-to-one, and that there are lots of studies that show that engagement and motivation in the classroom does increase with technology integration when done in a proficient way. So I would encourage you to check that out additionally later. At New Albany Primary School, we had 3 teachers who were piloting in their classrooms: Ann Stanko, Becky Wanless, and Stephanie Brewster's classrooms. I know Stephanie's here tonight. We'll speak a little bit later. But I think some of the features that Stephanie really liked in her classroom as she was doing the Bridges implementation was the ability to actually use the Bridges Map app to pull up different lessons and examples within her classroom. She could also show student works at their desk as they were sorting different manipulatives. You can easily take a photo of student work or student manipulatives and bring those up for everybody in the class to see, and perhaps to have students share their thinking with one another. Students can, of course, write directly on the iPad and mirror their work for the entire class to see, and the ability to monitor and manage student devices. So as Mr. Voss was saying earlier, if you notice a student is not on the correct website or doing what they're supposed to, you can instantaneously lock that down and go have a private conversation with that student to get them on track. You can also monitor what students spent their time on during class, how long they were on each app, and what they were doing for the length of time. But again, a great way to highlight a student without having to come up to the smartboard and be the sage on the stage. You can interact within the kids, sit right next to them, take a picture, or share out on the TV what somebody is doing and ask students what they notice about that student's work and their learning. So great way to mirror and share. At the intermediate school, we had students in Adam Culp's art class, Jenny Shope's 4th grade, and Pete Barton's 5th grade classes, as well as 6th grade and Tara Frederick's classrooms participating in the Apple pilot. These gentlemen on the left-hand side are using a Post-it Plus app where they've taken pictures of different cards and they're sorting them. The nice thing is that this archives the work. So before, where you might have been sorting cards or doing something with Post-its and then you roll it up and throw it away, you can take a picture and save that for sorting and to come back to that learning later. So that's a really nice feature that's available on one of the apps. On the right-hand side, they're playing Kahoot, a quick formative assessment to see students learning and monitor their progress. Lots of smiles on those faces. And in art class, and this short video right here is going to show a time lapse of a student artwork over time and how that changed. So this would be a great teaching tool as you're trying to model the project that's in front of you and to see the progress over time. Gives you a sneak peek there. This is 6th grade teacher Tara Frederick. She's talking in this short video about videoing her kids debating in class and then watching back. So often in athletics, we watch the game film and we learn how we did and we reflect. So she's actually used the video for students to video themselves debating and giving presentations and to reflect on kind of those strengths and improvements for moving forward.
They gave great feedback about how their
This is an example, kind of a culmination from Jenny Scho's fourth grade class, as well as highlighting some artwork at the intermediate and asking students their opinion of what they think on this technology.
Katie, before you
Yep.
start that, Mike or Patrick, is there any way to turn the volume up on the TV?
Yeah, I think in that video it was more of
The
a recording
distance.
issue with
Yeah.
it.
Okay.
I think you'll be able to hear this one just fine.
Yeah. All right, that's better. Thanks.
What I like about they are able to visualize the environment, just write on paper, and they're easier to use. My favorite thing about having Letterhead on the TV is we can watch Lifetime in Science and see what's actually happening instead of having to look over tall people to see what's happening.
I'm going to stop it there. You can definitely check out the whole video on your own, but there's a few things we want to highlight. But I think you can see there the nice live feature of modeling for the kids and for them to be able to see the techniques that he's using in class. So those are just some highlights from the intermediate. At the secondary level at middle school and high school, we had several teachers as well. Deborah Fruth, Erin Jones, Linda Schmidt, and Ashley Legendorfer. And one of the really neat things that occurred in Erin Jones' class is she actually gave the students a survey to ask them what they thought about the technology use in the classroom. And so some of their feedback is that it was easier to see, easier to follow along, that they can try new things, that the TV doesn't need calibrated as often. That we've got that feedback actually from a lot of the teachers that the Apple TV seems to connect more seamlessly, whereas some of the technology we have now, there is some connectivity issues at times. So that just the seamless transition and the sharing of all the student works between all of the devices. Here is an example from a high school math classroom.
That's my situation. I have P minus J to the 15th. I'm asking for J to the 11th. What is the 11th? 11 is R. And what is my N? 15. Just like before, I try to set this up, being very careful. So it's going to be 15C 11. But now I have to be super careful because I threw in a minus sign. If we're not paying attention.
So that's just an example, again, of the precision of the Apple Pencil and the ability to take the notes. And some of the other feedback that teachers shared is that when you take the notes like this, you can also save these in Notability. So if you want to upload them to a portal for parents to see, you can already have your notes in your lesson there if a student was absent. So that feature is really nice as well. I'm going to invite at this time any of our pilot teachers that would like to come up to the podium to share some personal experiences or testimonials or things that you liked about utilizing the tech in your classroom. Come on up.
Okay, I guess I'll start. I'm Jenny Schof. I'm the one who made the really long video, but I've just seen so much excitement with the kids, even when we just initially started it. But the level of engagement was completely different. Sure, they were engaged before, but there's something about it being live time that they are just completely enthralled with, and they want to touch, they want to feel, they want to experience it. We've used that Post-it note app, and it's a visual for them to sort things. And there's just so much that I feel like I can do that I couldn't do before. Whether it's with math, I can put up a visual model, I can send it out to their iPads and they can actually write on it in that way. And there are just so many things that I feel like I can do, not only to just get the content across, but to also help my higher kids to get what they need, and also my students who tend to struggle to kind of see it in a different way. So it's been really exciting, and the kids love it too. So.
Did you get some training to do all that?
I have an iPad or an iPhone. I've never had an iPad myself. I'm kind of a techie person. I think that's probably why I was chosen for this. But there was so much that I worked with Mike a lot and Katie, and they kind of brought a lot of different resources to me. I'd never used the Post-it note app. I'd never used Apple Classroom. I'd never used any of those things. And just trying it out, it was really user-friendly too. So I was kind of excited to pass that along.
Thanks.
I'm Ashley Langendorfer from the high school, and this is actually a clip from my classroom. I just have to say that it has really opened up doors for me to be able to walk around and be a much more visual in the classroom in terms of giving kids opportunities to interact a little bit differently than what they might have in the past. So giving kids the opportunity to actually write on the iPad and have the whole class be able to see it rather than me direct instruct has been really powerful. Also using apps like Decimus, which is something that's on the state test that we incorporate a lot. So that's an app that our students can access, and we can always talk about things and ways that they can find tricks along the way for those types of ideas. Also, the notes piece has been great. Kids that are absent can kind of stay on top of things. It's been fantastic. Also with Khan Academy, TED Talks, those types of things, it's really easy and seamless for me to pull those up and use those as a hook as well.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Stephanie Brewster, third grade teacher. And I will just have to say, I am a tech person, but not really familiar with Apple at all. And Teresa might have just converted me to, she's really excited about that. It has totally changed my teaching in the last couple weeks with having these devices. I haven't had the iPads a lot, but for my students to actually use. But Mike has come in, and I keep telling him, I just learned like 10 new things from you. I just learned like 100 new things from you. I would use notes for my grocery list and to keep track of my daughter's awards for dance competition. I never even knew that it could do what it does. And my students, we were able to show their math problems up on the display. They write so much neater. They're really engaged because they want me to show their work. And it really has just changed my teaching with moving around the room a little bit more. The smart boards really were not doing it for me. We just couldn't see the display, so I rarely used the smart board. I have some pictures of my students like hugging the smart board goodbye and waving at it, and they were just as excited as I was. So, it has definitely changed my thinking the last couple weeks, and Mike has really made me think a lot more about technology. So, and he's been awesome in teaching stuff. So.
I'm Adam Culp. I'm an art teacher in the intermediate building. I think the main exciting feature for me is just the doors that this will open on a creative level for the students. This is a device that professional artists use and make a very successful career out of. And I think that an intermediate student can come in and pick it up and learn how to use it. They're very user friendly, and most people know how to function on an iPhone to begin with. And this is just a giant iPhone, really. So they can go in and download apps that can open those doors, and they can kind of explore and have some fun with it. That's the exciting part. So
thank you.
I was just going to share too. Maybe he might want to talk about it more, but this is some of the artwork that he did an African mask with the Apple Pencil.
Today in my lesson this morning, I actually introduced African masks and the style and the design, and it was actually really nice to be able to screen my iPad onto the TV and do live drawings and examples of how to build a shape into a mask. And it just helped the students see it in real life instead of trying to look on the dry erase board or at a small drawing that they have to pass around. So it opened it up and made the lesson go very much more efficient than it would have in the past. So
Adam, how often do your students like to use the undo button?
Oh, that's probably one of the best features, because in a sketchbook, you go through pages upon pages of your mess up. So it's nice to be able to just back up a little bit. Yeah. So that door alone would, I think, help a lot of students that would get frustrated and just kind of give up early. They would be able to push through that and explore their creative idea a little bit farther. So it's pretty nice. Thank you.
Thank you, Adam.
So just one thing to kind of summarize it, as I've talked to the 11 teachers over the last few weeks, the one subtle thing that they mentioned a little bit, but is probably more powerful than anything, is that once we get away from the smartboard and the projectors, in the old days, the teacher was stuck at the front of the room teaching and looking at 25 or 30 students, staring blankly back at them. But now with the iPad and the Apple TV, they can walk around amongst the crowd, and that just right there, when your teacher's standing over your shoulder, makes you pay attention, okay? So it's just those subtle things that is really not a lot to do with the device itself, but just the actual physical proximity of the teacher makes it more engaging for the kids. So with that, I know you've asked a couple questions now, but any other questions?
I'll do an easy one. So it was kind of already mentioned, but none of the teachers here are going to miss the smart boards, just to be clear? Okay. Yeah.
What is?
IT will be very happy they're gone because we can't find pieces and parts.
So what would the training plan be for teachers?
So part of the package we have from Apple, excuse me. So we'll combine a lot of PD. So I'll do some PD with them. It's kind of New Albany specific PD. But then the package we have from Apple and the proposal actually includes 34 days of professional development from Apple. Okay. So we're right now roughly planning on about 9 days in the summer to get everyone up and going. And then we have the rest of the time to come up where they can come into classrooms. They could do before school, after school, Saturday afternoon if they want to, sessions with the teachers.
Mike, you want to talk about the badges?
Yeah, so Apple also has an online program. It's just called Apple Education. And what you do is you enroll as a teacher, and then anyone can do it, but it's meant for teachers. And then as you go through this training, you earn a badge. So you can earn an iPad OS badge. You can earn a Mac OS badge, a Pages badge. And that just gives you, that just reinforces the kind of nuts and bolts of the apps and the operating system.
Become an Eagle Scout?
Yes.
And then is the thought that teachers would educate the students every year?
So a couple of different things. First of all, and the teachers can, so I think Stephanie probably had the best example that I saw. She mentioned that the Notes app, and she's talking about just the regular plain Notes app on the iPad. So we were doing Apple Classroom in her room, and all I did was I just forced all the students to open up Notes. And within 2 minutes, the kids were drawing pictures, and that's where Stephanie didn't know that they could draw in Notes. The training for the kids is going to be a non-issue. Back to our data. Back to our data, 85 to 90% of those kids already have an iOS device that they use. They know how to do it. Certainly the teachers will help them, but then we also I talked with Mr. Carter about creating a student help desk. So we could have high school students kind of be Apple geniuses at the different buildings to train students on things.
That's a cool idea.
So how many iPads effectively are we purchasing? And
so for this fiscal year, what we're proposing is 1,650 iPads. That would be for student devices. That'll cover the 1-to-1 at the intermediate building. That'll cover the 10 in the classroom at the ELC and 5 carts of 30 at the primary building. And then it gives us about 100 extra so that we have breakage, so replacements for breakages or repairs that might happen. And then we'll have 175 iPad Pros, which are for the teachers, that are for their classroom use at that point.
what's the estimated life of an iPad?
The life of the iPad is probably 5 or 6 years. We're trying to estimate 4 years, so we're projecting a 4-year refresh cycle with it. I will just have to kind of gauge that as time goes on, but easily 4 years. We have iPads in the district right now that are over 4 years old. I think, Brian, the first iPads are probably 13, 14 year 13, 14 to purchase, so they're still running. The bigger problem with the iPads isn't that the device breaks or goes bad, it's that Apple stops supporting the updates to them.
Right.
It's their way of making you buy a new device.
So this is a 3-phase plan going through 2026. Is that built into the plan to replace after 4 years?
Yep. Yeah, if you look at that chart, it goes through. So fiscal year 19, we're buying the 1650. So 4 years from now, we're projecting to replace those. But again, we'll have to gauge that. We may be able to squeeze another year out of it. Again, the problem with it is we don't want to squeeze them too far because then you lose functionality. So we have options with that. Apple does have a buyback program. So if the product still has value, they will buy it back. And that gives you that kind of double-edged sword of trying to keep it as long as you can. But if you keep it too long, it loses all value and you get nothing back for it. So it's a kind of a sweet spot in there, about 4 years.
This is every 4th, 5th, and 6th grader would have a device?
Yep, and 5th and 6th graders will be able to take them home. 4th grade will stay in a cart in the building. So we won't replace, next year we'll buy carts for the fourth grade classrooms. They won't get replaced until 4 years down the road. As those 4th graders go to 5th grade, we buy them a device that goes home with them. So eventually we get to the point where we're just buying 5th and 9th graders iPads, and that maintains the one-to-one. And then replacing the carts.
When do you get to that point?
I'm sorry?
When do you get to that point?
Fiscal year 23.
Do we insure them?
So Apple does have, there are several ways to insure. Apple does have what's called Apple Care Plus. We actually chose not to purchase that for these devices. It would cost us $146,000 to buy Apple Care Plus for the devices we're doing. And what that does, that covers 2 breakages over the life of the device. So it's no questions asked, Apple just replaces it. So it sounds like a good deal, but it's actually not a fiscally responsible thing to do, because over that time period, we won't have $146,000 of breakages or repairs. Hilliard, for example, has been one-to-one iPads for about 4 years now. They average about 1 to 2% breakage in their devices. For us, that would equate to $22,000 a year if we had 1 to 2% breakages. So it's better just to plan for that than to pay the $146,000 for the Apple Care Plus, which won't be a good return on investment for us. Other options we have, other districts charge parents an optional insurance fee. So basically you self-insure, you have them pay $35, $40, and that covers their child for any breakages. So we're still talking about what's the right fit for us.
Do the students bear any responsibility?
So technically, any device right now, board policy 5513 says care of property. Any student breaks any district device, whether it's a window, a desk, an iPad, a computer, their parents are responsible for it. So technically, we're already covered from that respect, that if a student did damage something, they are fiscally responsible for it. We would want to build in some insurance so it's not so drastic for the parent.
With the 10 per classroom at the ELC, and then how many devices per cart? I see 5 carts in year 1.
30.
So 150. Is there a thought on the policy as to who gets a pad, or do you use it? Can you effectively use it in class when you only have 10?
Yeah, so we've talked, so the ELC actually has 10 iPads in classrooms right now. So I've talked with Michelle Unger, I've talked with teachers there, and we feel at this point going one-to-one, so 20 in a classroom at the ELC is kind of overkill, because most of the work they do is in stations at tables. So most of the work is the teachers with a group of kids doing individual things or small group things, while the other half is on something else. So 10 is a good number for that building. For the primary building, the 5 carts, actually we have 3 existing carts of iPads that are new. So we'll move those to the primary. So we'll actually have 8 carts total, 5 new, 3 existing, which gives them 2 per hallway. They still have the Chromebooks. So it'll take a little bit of time for them to get one-to-one iPad, but they do have those seeds so that they can share and get used to that environment.
So Mike, the way that this is building out, any current 8th grader and above is not going to be part of this program.
Correct.
So is the thought there just, these kids are bringing devices anyway, they're going to be able to make it with what they've got?
So our data shows that at the high school, they're already one-to-one and mostly iOS or Apple devices. So we would have to inform parents that we have to start somewhere with it. But the other thing that we've worked out with Apple is they're able to actually build us a website, kind of our own store. And we'll work with the store at Easton to do a New Albany night where parents can go in and get discount prices on things. So our data shows that parents are already buying the device. So for those kids that are going to miss the initiative, we can at least give the parents a break on the price.
Gotcha.
We have to start somewhere.
Yep.
For kids who will be getting one next year and already have a device, can you use their existing device, or how will that? What will they use, a second device?
No, so pretty much, if we go the one-to-one route, then we won't need students to bring in personal devices, and we would want them to use our device for a couple reasons. One, the Apple Classroom. If you're using a personal device, the teacher can't monitor and manage the device. But also, more importantly, is the online testing. We need to have the secure browser on there, so we can't put that on a personal device. So it needs to be a managed device by the district.
That's a state regulation.
So I have the $5 million question, or maybe it's a $4 million question, because I don't understand why there's a minus $947,000 amount in year 3, but.
It's not an accounting parentheses. It's just a parentheses. Like we might need to buy Chromebooks that year. To support the high school.
Okay.
Yeah. So it's
not
an accounting thing.
Yeah. It's not deficit spending.
So the $5 million question. Look, I love Apple devices. I have an iPad Pro. I have the Apple Pencil. I think it's great. I think your reasoning is sound and makes good sense. How much is that $5 million more than what we currently have budgeted for the next 5 years?
So it's about $5 million over what the current technology budget is. But that goes back to the permanent improvement levy that we passed and the planning for that. So in those conversations, if you recall, there was about $1 million from that was going to be earmarked for technology, $1 million per year earmarked for technology. So that's what this is. So over that course of that 8 fiscal years, that's where we're using that money that was earmarked for technology that's going to be used to fund this one-to-one initiative.
So that means we won't be spending any more money on any other technology?
No, because then we still have the technology budget that's in place. So it's $1 million on top, $1 million per year on top of the current technology budget, which maintains the infrastructure and just routine devices.
You remember when we talked about the permanent improvement levy, we still committed not just technology, but also other permanent improvement. We were still spending X out of the general fund, and we had X coming out of PI. So those two things together are what's paying for these.
So then it isn't $5 million more than what we've already planned.
Oh.
A portion of this, and I don't remember the numbers, I would say almost $400,000 is part of
the general
revenue fund that would be budgeted and used anyway. Per year.
I'm just going to ask again, is it more than what we've already planned?
No.
Okay.
Sorry, including the PI and the current tech budget, it's actually under what we had planned.
Right. It's the due diligence of how we're choosing to use the money more effectively and wisely to impact student learning, teaching, and outcomes.
Right, and all that made perfect sense.
Right. So like the teacher laptop replacement, we're choosing to do it a different way because it's going to happen. They're 6 years old. This is a year we have to purchase it. Next year it's middle school, high school. So all this is built into the budget. Now we're coming up with a systemic way of how we're going to uniformly do it across the platform to impact teaching and learning.
Cool.
It's going to be a shift. Fair. The teachers that have been using it,
and nothing could go wrong.
But it's a shift. It's going to require some work, but it's going to be great for kids.
But I guess maybe to further your question, this isn't going to have any effect on some of the infrastructure upgrades that continue to need to be made.
No, those are built into the yearly technology budget, right? Which still exists and keeps going. Right?
Yeah, Mr. Voss is always in the marketplace for additional budgetary opportunities.
I have yet to meet a technology.
Every time we
an
meet
IT
with Mr.
person that
Voss,
isn't.
there's always something that's a next opportunity.
Mr. Boss visits my office frequently.
To be reined back in.
Just to make sure I understand, for the middle school, that won't come until next year. For the
So middle school, well, actually, we're at, right, the classroom displays for the middle school and high school will be fiscal year 20. And then the middle school will take 2 years to become completely one-to-one as the 6th graders and 5th graders matriculate up.
The only way to accelerate it is to expend additional dollars that would have to come from the bottom line.
Or it's money we don't spend on something else.
And Ms. Jenkins and I are dutifully doing our best to try to find additional ways, and the leadership team members that are here know we talk about this routinely and frequently. How else could we spend dollars differently within the school district to meet a greater need? And we've done very well this spring and in next year's budget cycle, because we started with the 10% budgetary reduction across the board when budgets went out this year. And fortunately, we have achieved that as a leadership team, despite some of the hard conversations that were necessary to get to the 10% reduction.
I even had to have those conversations with the superintendent.
Yeah, I know. No one was accepted. Any other questions for Mr. Voss or the teachers that are present? On behalf of the leadership team and really the board, to all the teachers that are present, thank you for your participation. You were selected.
Sorry, just say one more. How long have we piloted this with the teachers?
So actually, Ashley and Linda Smith, the high school, have been using the iPad for instruction for 2 full school years. Well, this is the 2nd school year with them. And then Deborah Freers at the middle school was probably right after Christmas break. We got her going. So it's probably been 2 to 3 months on average across the district with that. And for the most part, other than me stopping in the classroom and helping them out, they didn't get any formal training. And we strategically picked people that were both at the high-end technology user and then at the lower end of the spectrum that weren't quite as comfortable, just to gauge what it was like. And across the board, it's been really an easy transition for them. And that's, I don't put words in their mouth, but they'll tell you it's been an easy transition over just the last couple months for them.
Thank you.
I just want to thank you for a really good presentation. I feel like you really grounded me in where we've been, where we're going, and all the examples really brought it to life. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
Is that grounded or drowned?
Okay. Yeah, before we go to our next presentation, which I'm looking forward to, Mr. Woodhouse. But any of the teachers, and especially the Kramers, if you don't want to stay, I know Ava and Isabella probably have things to do tonight. You're welcome to leave, and we won't think badly about you.
They're getting hungry.
But we're glad that you guys came, and it's great that you came to support your dad. So if you'd like to leave, you're welcome to do so. And
thanks so much for joining us.
Don't worry, we'll talk about you after you're gone.
Thank you.
Yes, thanks for the presentation.
See ya. Just upon ourselves. Ken, Marilyn's going to see you right over there. Please, thank you.
Already called to the principal's office.
30 seconds. It's fine. Next, for the branding presentation, I've asked Mr. Wieldonhouse and Mr. Galloway to come forward this evening to update the Board of Education on the work that we've done specifically related to the brand of the New Albany Plain Local School District. So we're happy to present this information to you this evening. Mr. Wieldonhouse and Mr. Galloway.
All right, well, thank you very much. As Mr. Sawyer said, we've certainly been working quite hard on putting together our branding style guide through several months of conversations, back and forth collaboration with VIP branding. We shared our current marks, our identified marks with them to put together in an easy to use style guide. Really, quite frankly, we are trying to bring consistency to our community, not just within our school district, but our entire community at large regarding our brand. Oftentimes, there are logos or insignia that are created outside of what we would identify as our brand for New Albany Plain Local Schools. So moving forward, we will require all parties utilizing any element of our brand to adhere to the specifications outlined within the brand style guide. Brand usage, the creation and application of any of these brands does need to meet the approval of the New Albany Plain Local School District, and we would not control, but we would make sure that the brand marks that were being used for the school district were meeting those that are within the brand style guide. Hopefully, I'm not sure if you have a copy of that, but we'll go through a few of those marks.
We do. When you say we, who's we will be approving? So who in the district? Like, is there a central point?
Yeah.
Office of the Superintendent with Mr. Galloway and or Mr. Wieldonhouse, but it'll ultimately come back to the Office of the Superintendent for final approval.
Correct. Yeah. So through our conversations, and Patrick can feel free to step in at any time, we talked about a lot of the community approvals coming through the Office of Communications, where as a lot of the parent groups or parent liaisons that are working with a lot of our sports teams and things like that would be obviously communicating through our athletic department office. So essentially, like I said, we took the logos, similar obviously to what I'm wearing today, and sent them to VIP branding to put together in a detailed style guide. As you will see, we have full color logos, single color logos, in ways that we would like and would not like our insignia to be used. So we have the NA, the interlocking NA with Eagle logo. We have the just interlocking NA, and then we also have our Eagle logo there at the top of that page that most often has been used by and with our football program, but we having an alternative logo to the NA interlocking logo is something that we felt was going to bring a nice mix. And so rather than creating something new, we are honoring what we've been doing in the past and just making sure that that was an approved and official logo. Again, these are just versions of single color logoing. Not everything that we do when we are embellishing items for apparel or uniforms are always done full color, depending on the item and depending on the budget behind the particular project. We do single color logoing as well. And so having those as examples, we felt very, very strongly about within the brand style guide, and then also implementing the district crest logo in there as well. And then having our eagle standing alone. Again, this is just an example of what our approved logos would look like on a simple background image. So whether the T-shirt or the document were white, gray, maroon, or black, that's what our logo would look like on those particular backgrounds. So while black isn't necessarily our school districts within our school district logo, it's a neutral color that's ultimately used as a canvas for the logo to be placed on. So the logo is not black as much as just the surface that the logo is being placed on. Often happens in our uniforms, or again when different apparel is not necessarily available in white or gray, or doesn't really fit for that. We included what the approved colors were, what they were called, and the Pantone colors that were associated with those particular colors. So we have a dark maroon, a Vegas gold, and then obviously a black and a white. And those are included within the style guide as well.
Yeah, of course. So those of you who aren't designers or may not be affiliated with Pantone, these are the numbers that are very important for a vendor to have. So if they don't have these exact numbers, the color is not going to look like what we have just branded here. So I just think it's really important that you all know that upfront. So, yeah.
Is that going to apply to for future purchases of whether it's uniform or T-shirts or anything else that you want the colors to match as well? Because we've had, different shades of maroon and gold and all kinds of stuff.
Yeah, and part of this is obviously identifying what that color is going to be. Part of our partnership with BSN Sports and Nike is using a consistent maroon. So Nike has a dark maroon color that is as matched to that particular Pantone color as we can get. A cardinal, for instance, would not be, right? Yeah. So. Just matching the approved fonts through the town of New Albany. The Times New Roman font is included in the package as the typography that would be approved for the style guide purposes. So you want to talk about next steps?
Yeah. So in terms of next steps and communication, I haven't really mentioned this yet to Richie, but I think for even over summer, ramping up back to school, we can definitely launch this guide as a resource on our website so that people know this is where you have to go to obtain, number one, permission to use the official logos, but number two, we'll be able to then control that, all of that process. So we'll have the high vector images that you can't just nab that from our website and try to use it and duplicate it on a t-shirt, because you're going to want the highest quality image. So basically in the communication department and then working with Richie, anyone, if it's PTO, if it's, as you mentioned, some of the sports teams, club teams, things of that nature, because there are a lot out there. We all know that. We want them to come to us to get the official logos and the high quality artwork so that when they do produce that material, whether it's a hat, whether it's a t-shirt, whatever it might be, they're going to have the official logo information. So, and then we'll work with future vendors. So we know that there's a lot of people that have connections in the community, or they might find deals for other types of t-shirts or sweatshirts, whatever they might have. We will then set our guidelines to work with those vendors that they identify in the future going forward. So, yeah.
So you will be reaching out to all the organizations that we're aware of to give them notice
Correct.
now.
Correct.
Not
We'll
just
work
expect
with-
they'll go to the website.
We'll work with all the PTOs from communication standpoint. Richie will work with everyone that works with athletics, and then any other organization that we know of that's been producing or interested in producing New Albany merchandise. So, and then there's a staff memo that we have ready to go so that all staff are aware of this change, which I think, Michael, we want to send tomorrow, correct?
Our intent is to send it tomorrow and then produce the same type. This is just an example, but there would be a vendor memo to Mr. Darrow's question. Specifically that we would send to known vendors that currently do business with the school district or do business with the PTO to tell them this is the new brand guide and these are the requirements that must be adhered to.
This is super helpful.
Yeah, I think this is great. I think it's important work.
Yep.
This is the kind of stuff that assures that there's some consistency. Question becomes, I'm sure you've thought about it. I don't know what the answer is. What do you do when somebody doesn't follow the rules?
The policing. So it's the policing of the logo, essentially. Well, it'll be a conversation to have, but we have to be direct.
We've talked about the follow-up. It comes back to when do we find out? Is it after it's produced? Was it a fundraiser, not a fundraiser? Who violated? How did it get violated? So we're going to have to work through that process, but it goes back to the administration's responsibility to try to help persons understand this is the expectation, these are the requirements, and you're not in conformity. And then we'll have additional conversation as necessary to determine what we want to do. I don't know if sanctions, I don't know if we tell them they can't distribute it. I don't know. We have to see what happens when that occurs, but it's going to require conversation on behalf of the school district to ensure the integrity of what the brand is.
Yeah, it's going to be a when, not an if.
Yeah, it's going to happen.
Does this have any influence over travel teams?
No, I mean, those are not. I mean, I've seen that NA logo that's specific to travel teams and things like that. It would be in effect if they were trying to recreate our logo in some different form or fashion.
And there's nothing around fonts here, suggested fonts on.
There's
Times New Roman's included.
Oh, okay.
It's under typography.
Is there any thought to reaching out to Parks and Rec and others to? I mean, it would be. I mean, it would be nice. I mean, they're part of the community, just from a branding perspective. I know they're not part of the school, but is there any thought to having some sort of partnership there?
We can ask. I mean, we've talked about like one of the exceptions that we specifically have internally. There's a eagle caricature that's used for Eagle's Nest for the after-school program. It's still branded as a school district, but they have an eagle that basically looks like a cartoon character, but it says camp on it, like they use for the summer camp. So we're not going to that level because it's still branded as a school district with our logo. It's just a character, a caricature that's on their literature information. So they can keep that. We're not policing that to the similar for the Travel League, but we're happy to try to work with them if they would be interested. I mean, Richie can reach out specifically to travel teams and or Parks and Rec. I mean, it's a good suggestion. We can do that.
I mean, just coincidentally, at a lacrosse tournament, my son plays lacrosse, and at a lacrosse tournament, someone asked if, there was ever an opportunity for, their team to use our logo, because obviously that's the majority of my wardrobe, and that's what I was wearing that day. But, that's certainly a conversation, because I've seen it happen in a lot of communities. The community I grew up in, Kettering, and neighboring communities like Centerville. I mean, that particular logo is not just the high school or the school district's logo, that's the community's logo. And so expanding those conversations is certainly something that I know I would be welcome to do, and just to bring, community around the logo.
Go ahead, Paul.
I just had two questions sort of related. Are all of these logos already in use? I mean, there's nothing, or is anything new on here?
There's nothing newly developed. The Eagles extraction from the NA would be something that might be a little bit different, that isn't typically used, but all of those marks are currently used marks.
And then when the next fashion genius comes up with one they want to get approved, is there a process to go to?
It would come back through the school district, ultimately come to recommendation, because tonight on the agenda, I'm actually recommending that you approve the branding guide so that we take a public position that this is the standard that's now acceptable within the school district on behalf of the Board of Education.
I'm just curious, with VIP branding or whoever it was, as you went through this process, I'm guessing there are probably some places where they have to start from scratch. I mean, what are their thoughts on our?
Just a prime example of a local client that they've worked with is Olentangy Schools with the opening of Olentangy Berlin.
Oh, yeah.
That all of Olentangy Berlin's logoing marks have been done by VIP branding, and they have a similar relationship with Varsity Brands as we do. And so if you were to research Olentangy Berlin, every single mark that you would see was developed. So they have a variety of mascot only, all the way through crests and those types of things. And so that was a start from scratch project. So they certainly do those types of projects. Ultimately, they took what we are sending them and piecing together the actual style guide. But
yeah, no, I guess what I meant was, clearly we had already had something that was pretty well established. So their thoughts on kind of how, what we have currently. And I mean, obviously we didn't, to Paul's point, we didn't have to add anything new or really change much other than extracting the eagle. So were they pretty, I guess, overall pleased with, hey, you guys have kind of already got a fairly decent brand here?
Oh yeah, no, I mean, our logo is, complemented by a variety of folks, including VIP branding. And, there are some ideas that they would have on just sort of bringing something along the same lines and sort of expanding the logo. But at this point in time, we weren't interested in that for this purpose. But I mean, our logo is synonymous with New Albany. And in fact, at the same lacrosse tournament, we were near Cincinnati, and just walking by, someone just commented on me being from New Albany, and nothing said New Albany. It was just an NA and an Eagle logo. So
a couple of questions. Are any or all of these marks registered? Because I don't see a TM or R in a circle on any of them.
As a member school of OHSAA, which is also a subsidiary of the National Federation of High Schools, the National Federation of High Schools would recognize our logo as a licensed product. And so back to the licensing piece, we as a school district or as a high school would be under the National Federation licensing agreement. So while we don't necessarily have them trademarked through the branding style guide, through the work that we've done there, as well as being under the National Federation of High Schools, we would be able to serve a cease and desist letter to any vendor that was unapproved usage of our logo. For instance, an example of that would be if we did not approve of Kroger selling our apparel that was not gone through the licensing process through the NFHS, we would have the ability to send a cease and desist letter to that vendor for them to stop. Most often, those agreements through national, retailers are done through the proper channels, but sometimes they aren't. That's more on the local level, where a mom and pop shop might be selling our apparel with our logo without our approval. We would still be able, under the NFHS licensing agreement, be able to send a cease and desist letter to that particular.
Is there documentation to back that up?
Oh yeah, I can certainly find that. Yeah.
I don't want to read it.
There it is. I mean, that's certainly backed up through that.
Check with our attorney to get there.
Just one, I didn't know there was an alternate path for registration. And then another question came up as I was listening to you and looking at the podium. That's not an approved logo, right?
The old logo.
So we've talked about the retrofitting. Obviously, in the intermediate building, for example, the entire servery, both floors, is not the right brand now because we've now changed it. But we said we're not going to go to the expense. So where this is moving forward from here, this is the guide. So we just don't feel that it would be probably supported by taxpayers.
As things need to be repainted, repaired,
right?
Whatever we can.
Right.
I would agree, repainted, but not replace the rubber floor that's going to last 99 years at the intermediate school because it was custom.
I'm good with that.
I'm
good with that.
And it will stay there as historical value.
But the other part we've talked about is
seems like a good use of funds.
It is
something as simple as our letterhead. So we've got letterhead currently that is going to be the old logo. We're going to run out of that, and then we'll order new logo letterhead when it's time to be printed. Things, business cards, things like that. So, yeah.
I just want the board to be prepared that the memos that President McClellan and I drafted are going out to everyone tomorrow. I don't anticipate any issues with staff, but when the vendors receive them, you might get some feedback. So just be prepared if you get called that the Board of Education is taking, or I'm recommending the Board of Education take action this evening. So they might want to call and ask you about your action.
Let me ask a different way for the travel teams then. Does this impact them at all?
No.
No, it will not impact them in a negative way. The only way that it could impact them is if they would like to have the conversation about using this particular logo for their purposes.
So if they wanted to use one of these cool eagles, they need to call.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Other questions related to branding? Again, thank you, Richie. Thank you, Patrick.
Thank you.
It's been a journey, but it's much needed.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Board policy. Lastly, in this section for this evening, for public content, there are 9 policies that are presented for second reading. Again, these relate to the updating of specific requirements for student handbooks or board policies related to the start typically of the school year. So we're in the process of trying to make sure we're fast tracking anything that needs to be updated for handbooks for summer as we prepare for 2018-19. But again, I'm happy to answer any questions specific to these 9 policies that are presented this evening for second reading.
Any questions? If not, then we will move on to our first opportunity for public participation. And we have no one this evening, so then we will move on to treasurer's items, A through C. Could I have a motion, please?
So moved.
Mr. Darrow, Mr. Bush, Ms. Jenkins.
The monthly financials and the revenue side of note, we have collected about $2.7 million more in tax dollars than we anticipated. We're looking to figure out what the absolute impact of the state and local tax change impacted. So in districts like New Albany, where people can afford to pay 100% of their tax year bill, they did so in December, which means that then in August, when we receive our bills again, most of those people have already paid. So when we update the forecast, which I'll bring to you next month, I'm going to increase the current year, but next fiscal year is going to be less. But between the 2 fiscal years, it'll be what we anticipate. And then it'll get back to the normal collection the year after that, because that tax deduction will have already taken place. So the majority of that is because of that state and local tax impact change. And then
Becky, I'm sorry, just to clarify. So you think the 2.7 million is due to people prepaying their taxes to
not
try to
all
get?
of it, but the majority of it.
And that's a estimate, or do we have something that?
I'm going through all of the information that we received from the county auditor's office to make sure how much of that is from that. And then once I have that for sure number, we'll show that in the forecast going forward.
Thanks.
Then moving down to expenditures, as we discussed at the last meeting, we do know that we have identified at least the 609,000. I do anticipate to be slightly better than that by the end of the fiscal year, not quite 800,000. But what you will see is that we're transferring some funds. So while you can add all of those up, it's 1.3 million right now, fiscal year to date under expenditures. At the end of the year, at the end of June, you're going to see that slightly higher, but then you're going to see the transfer line is over because we're moving the monies from those lines down to transfer into the permanent improvement fund. We talked about when we updated the forecast in January after the levy was passed, we talked about still putting that $1.3 million that we had in the forecast over into permanent improvement in the current year, and then we eliminated that going forward in all of the other years. So that's what the $1.3 million transfer of funds is, which is the next item. And then the appropriation modifications, 300 district managed activity is actually the athletic department. And you can see the explanation. We had several camp funds that did not anticipate the fundraising that they realized. And so we have to increase that so that they can spend the money that they brought in. And then IDAB, we did have an adjustment there, an increase of $32,945. That's just aligning that to the CCIP, which is the federal grant. We don't control that. That can change throughout the year.
Any other questions? Have a roll call, please.
Vice President Darrow?
Yes.
Mr. Bush?
Yes.
Mr. Newmock?
Yes.
Mrs. Kalinowski?
Yes.
President McClelland?
Yes. Now I'd like a motion for superintendent's items A through D, including the addendum for this evening.
So moved.
Mrs. Kalinowski?
Second.
Mr. Bush? Mr. Sawyers?
Thank you, President McClelland. For personnel items this evening, you have standard employee action items. I want to highlight a couple. Resignations continue to come into the school district. It's spring, it's HR, it's basically what happens every year. We will have a retirement reception at the May 14th Board of Education meeting from 5:15 to 6:15 p.m. We've sent you invitations, but we'll honor all the retirees at the reception as well as the board meeting that evening. On the personnel agenda this evening, we have action items to renew administrative contracts. There are 15 administrative contracts within the school district that are expiring that I started talking to you back in December about. So now we are into the month of April and they come forward this evening specifically for the renewal, and my recommendation to rehire members of our leadership team that work tirelessly on behalf of the entire school district every single day. So we're very honored to present their contracts to this evening for renewal. In addition to that, there's stipends on the agenda typically for summer. So this is the process where we're going through and trying to offer summer academy courses. These are tuition-based courses with the exception of students with special needs or intervention requirements specific to their IEPs or requirements within the school district itself. But those will be summer academy offerings that we're currently advertising across the school district to see if there's students that wish to participate in the summer outside of core curricular requirements that have to be met. On the addendum agenda related to personnel, you have the recommendation to hire Ken Kramer as the high school principal as well as a new intervention specialist for 2018-19 that Mrs. Saunders and staff have secured for the intermediate school with Mrs. Nowak. For general business items this evening, letter B, In preparation for the 2018-19 school year, we're recommending some specific courses be added for the 2018-19 school year for the alternative school that's being planned for New Albany High School. So the Apex Learning Environment and the course catalog is presented this evening specifically for curriculum-related events to actually come forward to the Board of Education to offer grade and credit for students that earn online courses within that environment. In addition to that, you have standard action items pursuant to contractual requirements for employees' children at work, to have eligibility to attend our school district if the employee was hired in our school district prior to 2008. So there's still a few students that do become eligible based upon the contractual requirement. Standard action items related to the field trips. The brand guide is actually a general business item this evening, as well as the purchase of the technology that's being recommended for phase 1 for applicable implementation and the purchase of the classroom displays specifically for the school district, as well as the purchase of kitchen server equipment. Mrs. Charles annually tries to update specific elements within the food service program. The food service department's self-sustaining. We actually generate enough revenue from the sale of daily school lunches to then replace specific equipment within the department. So we go through this annually, but you have an action item this evening where the money that we've raised actually from selling lunches is being put back into the program to replace a specific servery at the high school for the new panini stations that are coming. So there'll be different panini lines in the fall. So we currently have panini, but it's going to look different when the kids come back to school in August. But the panini station's getting a facelift, which is kind of fun. And then on the general business item for the addendum agenda, I'm going to talk a little bit about it. Ms. Jenkins and I, based upon conversations with the insurance company, are recommending board action this evening for replacement of a contract with Final Floors for the middle school gym floor. So plus or minus the first week of April, the sump pumps had a mechanical failure based upon a control mechanism on the board related to it. And as a result of the failure, the middle school gym flooded. Based upon the water damage that has been done to the middle school gym floor, and Mr. Darrow and Mr. McClellan both visited the gym floor last Friday. And had conversations with staff, and our maintenance staff has done a tremendous job for everything they've done to date. But we've been actively working with the insurance company over the course of the last 3 weeks. We're doing one last moisture reading later this week to look at the 3.5 week trend. It's our opinion that the floor must be replaced. The current estimate to replace the floor is $160,000. Our insurance policy will reimburse the school district for $100,000 of the $160,000 for sewer water backup once it's ruled eligible by the insurance companies. The insurance company's asking for this last moisture reading. I think Mr. Darrow and Mr. McClellan will probably echo my thoughts and tell you that it needs to be replaced. We are working aggressively with the insurance company to reach an agreement that the floor is going to be replaced because we think there's a long-term liability associated to the current condition of the floor. So the action item tonight is actually the approval from the Board of Education so that if we get the green light from the insurance company, your next board meeting is not till May 14th. Final Floors is the vendor that was recommended by the insurance company to come out and do all the work to date as part of the claim that's been filed by the school district. So we're comfortable and moving that forward. We have solicited a second bid. The other bid has not been received by the school district. That company has not come. If they do come, we'll look at their bid because we will control that. And if necessary, convene a special meeting for the Board of Education to move forward in the event we need to change vendors before May 14th in your next meeting in order to start this process to replace the middle school gym floor. Mr. Darrow or Mr. McClellan, would you like to add anything about the floor?
I'm going to defer. I'm not an expert. I'm not an expert in this area. All I know is a gym floor should be flat, not a skate park.
We have a skate park right now.
But Mr. Darrow has technical expertise here, so.
So I went and looked at it. My business sells pumps. I've been doing this work for 30 plus years, so I want to take a look at it. Just a small but meaningful correction to Mr. Sawyer's comment. It wasn't a mechanical failure. The pumps are fine, but the controller was damaged probably in some sort of electrical storm of some sort. So What was really cool is that the district has on staff a very capable maintenance guy that created a new programmable controller that is better than what was there before, and it's all networked and backed up and multiple levels of security. So it was pretty impressive what a resident employee was able to accomplish. So the system looks really good. The floor is a mess. It can't be repaired. My comment to Michael was, even if the insurance company says no, the floor can't be repaired. So not only do I do pumps for work, but I do woodworking for a hobby. So that floor is not salvageable. And it seems like a fair price.
So even if the insurance company pays up to $100,000, we still have to approve the entire 160 because we're going to spend the money and pay that to the vendor and then receive the revenue.
Well, and maybe just as an added piece here, that floor was an original floor and was probably due for some maintenance anyway.
Yeah, so this summer is actually scheduled as part of the maintenance budget to be sanded and repainted and refinished. That's $20,000 that we planned on spending this summer to actually redo the middle school floor. Now that clearly is not going to happen. So of the 160, 100,000 is covered by insurance, 20,000 we had budgeted for resanding, resurfacing. So now we're only in deficit 40 on the worst case. So that was the cost estimate that was received, not to exceed $160,000 based upon the action we're requesting this evening. The last item is board policy, and again, it's just the second reading with a motion to move forward with the 9 policies that we had presented for board consideration.
Is it comment time? Question time?
Yes.
So I'd like to go back to the administrator contracts. Conversation on administrator contracts. And what I'd like to go back to is during the interview process, part of the feedback we got from some of the candidates who chose not to move forward with the district was that they questioned the board policy of only 2-year contracts. And I want to start by saying I'm thrilled to extend the contracts of the administrators that are on our list to extend their contracts. The notion, the idea behind 2-year contracts isn't that we want people to leave after 2 years. The idea behind 2-year contracts is very, very consistent and importantly consistent with the district's statement of purpose, which is to create a culture of accountability. We lead with accountability. And you know, my history in business is my entire executive team has been with me for over 20 years. And, you know, we, having longevity, having people have the opportunity to build a career somewhere and here, since we're talking about the school, is important. At the same time, it's important that everyone in the district recognizes that we have to earn our positions every year. And so, to the extent that some candidates viewed it as a negative, that they're taking a risk for a 2-year contract, my response to that is we probably don't want them. They probably don't fit our culture. And people who do fit and people who are excited to come in every day and make things happen and have the confidence to know that we're going to see that the superintendent's going to see their great work and the board's going to see their great work and is going to be excited to extend the contract. Those are the people that I certainly want to see in the district. And that's the reasoning behind the 2-year contracts.
Any other questions or comments?
I'd like to go back to the Apple purchase and the displays. I think the presentation was very good. I think I'm very excited about where that can take our district going forward. Same time, I am concerned about how it's currently scheduled to be rolled in. And I maybe outside of Robert's Rules of Order, I'd like to consider removing the Apple technology contract and the classroom displays from the agenda for reconsideration of the implementation plan and brought back at the next meeting.
I think there would have to be a motion to remove that agenda item. So there's a motion, but I would need a second.
Are you saying
for
you
discussion?
want to table it for one meeting or you want to remove it?
If we table it, we can come back and discuss it and vote next time.
If you table it, it has to come back at the next meeting.
If you remove it, then we just have to decide when we put it back on.
I would move to table it.
Can you share a little more what your concerns are with the timing?
Again, I think it's from making sure that we have fully thought out, and there was some discussion earlier about, is there an ability to have a equitable distribution across the district of implementation? It sounded like our middle school at this point would be rolled out in 2020, 2019 for next year. And I just think that's one of the elements here that'd be of concern about rolling it out without addressing the rest of the district all at once.
Wait, I'm sorry. You're talking about a more one-time aggressive rollout?
I'm not. I think it's something that I'd like to go back and have our team, our staff look at. But I think as we discussed, right now we have a rollout plan over 8 years, and we actually have this year a portion of the students are going to have access. Next year we'd have the middle school have access, but next year we'd have zero access to middle school as it currently stands.
No, next year it would be the current, next year's sixth grade. Next year at the middle school, you're correct. There's no one that would have it. But it goes back to the implementation plan and looking at the 4-year cycles, that when you entered 5th grade, it stays with you through 8th grade. So the next year 6th graders in the school district, the following year in 1920, when they become 7th graders, they would have them in 7th grade. Then the following year in 2021, based upon the cycle, because we're trying to stay within our budgetary means, because that's our current control, is unless we change the budget and release more dollars or find more dollars, I can't increase the aggressiveness of the implementation plan, because we've gone through that in multiple iterations with Mr. Bosse to date to try to figure out how do we live within the current budget. So we're trying to stay budgetarily within our current means that are available, that we have forecasted either through PI or general revenue fund, without coming back and saying we need additional dollars. So unless I can find additional dollars somewhere else through other cost savings, the only way to increase the aggressive schedule is to add more money that becomes available.
And I guess to that end, again, I'm not saying we can resolve this at the table today, but we talked about carts and how many we're going to have 150 iPads, but we already have 80 at the primary school, so we have 240. What does that mean? I don't really know what that means in terms of
2 per hallway.
Okay, how many kids in a hallway? How many classrooms in a hallway?
Approximately 10.
You're going to catch me in the math. I'm not going to be able to do that quick.
Oh, how many kids? There's 10 classrooms. Mike, you want to answer?
One thing to also remember is the Chromebooks that are currently in the district aren't going away.
Mike, they can't hear you on TV. Can you go to the microphone?
So in terms of student access to technology, one thing to keep in mind is that Chromebooks we currently have in the district aren't going to go away. So the primary school will probably be very close to a one-to-one environment. It'll just be a mixed Chromebook iPad environment. The middle school is actually really close to one-to-one with their Chromebook carts right now. So that'll stay. So we're not taking a step back in any building in terms of student to device ratio. It actually just gets better over the years with that.
So the software is compatible across the Chromebook and the Apple. I thought the discussion earlier was that the Chromebook wasn't sufficient for use. We needed to have the Apple.
It's not the ideal choice, but it maintains what we are currently doing until we can fund the one-to-one initiative K-12.
Will delaying a vote today impact the schedule in any way for this year?
Yes. So typically with schools, there's the mad rush at the end of a school year to order equipment. So now you're procuring equipment with manufacturers, with vendors. You're getting on their installation schedule. In terms of Apple, we're getting on the professional development schedule. So if we delay it, it can certainly be delayed, but that pushes everything back, which then gets into a little bit of a fight between me and Dwight Shrigley, because they're waxing, but we want to install displays. And now it just pushes, it puts us under the knife, so to speak, under the gun with the timing.
Another question is, if we were to vote to approve what we have today, Can we come back, and I don't know if this will address your question, Paul, or not, because I want to make sure we get the question answered. But if we vote to approve what we have today, can we put the item on the agenda for the next meeting to consider accelerating the implementation? Would that?
So I'm just hearing 2 weeks is going to make a difference. You can't execute in 2018 if we don't approve tonight. We're hearing about this.
No,
For the first time.
I did not say that. What it does is it pushes the schedule back, which then gets us closer to the start of the school year. And we're talking about installing 80 to 85 digital displays in classrooms, which means we have to uninstall those smart boards, install the displays. So what that does is it just puts us very close to the beginning of the school year. It's already a tight window. So that just jeopardizes what it looks like when school starts. And same with the training for the teachers, that when we push that back, because we're competing with every other district out there that's doing this for the installers, for the equipment, it just pushes it back and it gets into a scheduling conflict. So while we can order fine, but someone else gets ahead of us in terms of the installation schedule or in terms of the professional development schedule.
Okay, thanks for the information. I will go ahead and allow the vote to proceed. I don't intend to support it tonight, but I prefer we wait, have some more discussion how we could have a more equitable distribution across the district. But in order to keep the schedule moving forward, I'm okay with a vote moving forward.
Would you want to put on the agenda for next time, so we can have it, here in this conversation, put it on the agenda for next time, accelerating the schedule?
That would be helpful.
I guess we would need additional information as to understand what specifically that means so that we can prepare what you want. So
in short, 7th and 8th graders are not going to have access next year.
Right.
That's a primary objective.
So is that the charge, to try to figure out what would it take to accelerate to have middle school access sooner?
I just got the presentation half hour ago. So I think I would like to have some more discussion that probably is not able to be done at this discussion, because I don't know all the parameters you're closer to than I am. Michael's closer to it than I am. Teaching staff is closer to it than I am.
So you would allow that motion to die for lack of second?
Yes.
And then
So we will proceed, but then I will just need to make sure that we are able to vote. Let me get the right item numbers.
Apple's number 4, B4.
Okay.
And the classroom displays are B5.
So then I would like a motion.
You have to amend.
To amend.
Have a motion.
I need someone to request an amendment to the initial motion to accept all the superintendent's items A through D. And then that motion would need to basically ask for us to consider consider personnel items A through B2, and then B3 and B4, correct?
why are we
Yeah,
amending?
I don't think so.
Yes.
No, he's still moving forward.
I'll withdraw my motion.
Oh, we're withdrawing. Okay.
So we said we were going to let that die for lack of second.
Okay, I just thought you wanted to vote separately on that because you didn't want to support it.
No,
No, he wants us to bring back at the next board meeting.
No, John's right.
Board
John's right.
decision.
He asked for
John's
two
right.
things.
He does not.
That's the second part.
Yes.
Yeah, he asked for the ability to vote separately on Apple and the display,
So
which means you have to amend the current motion.
So I need an amendment to the motion to accept items A1 through B2. And then I need a separate motion for B3 and B4, and then B5 through D. So could I have a request to amend?
So moved, requested, as you described.
Second.
Yes, Mr. Darrow and Ms. Kalinowski. So it'll be 3 separate votes.
Okay.
Okay. So on the motion of A1 through B2,
I don't know what I've got.
could I have a roll call, please?
Vice President Darrow,
Yes.
Ms. Kalinowski,
Yes.
Mr. Newman.
To clarify, this is the one that includes,
No.
yes.
Mr. Bush,
Yes.
President McClellan.
Yes.
Okay, now I get it.
Okay. Those motions carry. Now may I have a vote, a roll call, please, on items B3 and B4.
This is
No,
Apple.
This is
and
Apple and,
It's B4, B5.
I'm sorry, B4, B5.
So moved.
Gotcha.
Have a roll-
Second.
That's already been,
Oh,
it's
sorry.
already been amended. May I have a roll call, please?
You have to have a motion and a second for each vote. that
I'm
you're
sorry.
gonna take.
So I do have, there was a motion by Mr. Newmoff. Excuse me, I'm sorry.
So Paul moved.
And a second by Mr. Darrow. Now a roll call, please.
Mr. Newmoff,
No.
Vice President Darrow,
Yes.
Mr. Bush,
Yes.
Ms. Kalinowski.
Yes.
President McClellan.
Yes.
So
Motion
now,
still carry. And now a motion to approve items B6 through D.
So moved.
Ms. Kalinowski.
Second.
Mr. Newmoff. May I have a roll call, please?
Ms. Kalinowski.
Yes.
Mr. Newmoff.
Yes.
Mr. Bush,
Yes.
Vice President Darrow,
yes.
President McClellan.
Yes.
I don't think you voted on B3 because you said A to B2 and then you changed it to B4, B5.
That's correct.
So you have to go back and do B3.
That's
because
correct.
You didn't do it.
And that's the brand guide, so we need that one. So I misspoke. So may I please have a motion for the acceptance of Superintendent item B3?
So moved.
Second.
Mr. Darrow, second by Ms. Kalinowski. May I have a roll call, please?
Vice President Darrow,
Yes.
Ms. Kalinowski.
Yes.
Mr. Newmoff.
Yes.
Mr. Bush,
Yes.
President McClellan.
Yes. And now all the superintendent's items are taken care of. Thank you.
Yeah, I think you're good.
Thank you.
Yes, sir. Public participation? With no one this evening, then I will ask for a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
Darrow, Ms. Kalinowski, roll call, please.
Vice President Darrow.
Yes.
Ms. Kalinowski.
Yes.
Mr. Newmoff.
Yes.
Mr. Bush,
Yes.
President McClellan.
Yes, we are adjourned until our next meeting, which is Monday, the 14th of May. Thank you.